Recording now. Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name is Linda Smith, and I am the current Loxahatchee Group XCOM Chair and your MC for tonight. We're asking everyone to please use the chat function of the Zoom to put your questions in the chat. We are going to have Merrill Davids, who's agreed to monitor the chat. So I want to give a big thank you out to Merrill for doing that. And I am realizing that I can't have that open the same time I'm going to the next slide. So I would really encourage everyone to go to our website. Our homepage lists all of our meeting information at the bottom and a calendar, and these are updated probably weekly. So if you've lost that reminder for a Zoom link, or you're just starting to become more involved in the Sierra Club-Loxahatchee group, please check it out. You'll also find links to our wonderful Turtle Tracks articles there if you click on the News tab. And tonight's meeting is being brought to you by our Conservation Committee, chaired by the incomparable Drew Martin. So if everyone wants to practice their Zoom skills, feel free. Give Zoom applause to Drew Martin for his work in the Conservation Committee. Thank you, Drew. And I am also letting people in, so. The Conservation and Communication Committees have put a lot of work on preserving the Palm Beach County Agricultural Reserve. Now, some people might think that this is not their local issue, but this issue will really affect the entire food chain for the Eastern Seaboard. And I don't think we really want all of our fresh winter fruits and vegetables to be coming from overseas. Now, this meeting is obviously going to be listed on our website, as I discussed. Some of the details are on this slide. If you are not able to attend, I ask you to please consider submitting a comment card. And I know this is a very long website, but I don't know of any other way to do it. And you can go to the Palm Beach County BC home and get to it eventually, but you look at the agenda and you can see there's a submit public comment, a blue item at the bottom of this screenshot, and it clicks up an opening and you put in your name and your contact information and you can write your contact. Please include item 4A, and the meeting date is October the 26th. We are also going to be doing a native tree canopy presentation to the commissioners. That is going to be on Thursday, the October 28th at 9:30 in the council chambers. Please mark your calendars and try to attend. I do not have currently, because they put the agendas out a week in advance, information on that, but I will be updating the website. So if you go to the website and register, you will get up-to-date information about that meeting as well. We are nothing without our members, and we really do appreciate everyone that has been coming to our meetings, reading our newsletter articles, all that. I know everyone's been writing emails and writing letters, and even some letters to the editor, to the Palm Beach Post. Every once in a while I see a Loxahatchee group member there, so we appreciate it. But we also need your help too. So if you see anything of interest, please reach out and volunteer. This is the short list of our upcoming committee meetings that are coming out in the next month or two. Hopefully you'll see something of interest, and as I continue to mention, they're all listed on our website. Sierra Club is working to build back better. You've probably seen a lot of information in the paper, etc. I know some of these dates on this slide have passed, and some of the dates are sliding due to Congress, as you're probably well aware of. But I ask you to please go to your browser and search Sierra Club There's still time to build back better. That's Sierra Club. There's still time to build back better, to get information on what you can do, sending emails, making phone calls, whatever you feel comfortable doing. There's also a ways to take action. Again, if you search Sierra Club, ways to take action, that will take you to something that looks very much like this page. You can also contact the email on this slide and volunteer to help to build back better and find ways to take action. We are also starting to register for the Southeast Florida Regional Compact. This is the 13th annual, and it is a virtual event. So I really encourage people to attend. It is $75 to register. It is a 2-day event full of a lot of great information. And if the cost is a deterrent, please contact me personally. I would like to have Sierra Club-Loxahatchee group attending this event. So tonight, for fun, and I don't know if you can see this, we're going to have a mystery question. And the mystery question is eligible to anyone that has access to the chat. And you will be able to win this fabulous Sierra Club tumbler if you provide the correct answer to the mystery question. So you're going to need to stay tuned until the end of the program for the mystery question. And obviously you're going to have to stay awake or you're going to not know the answer. So stay awake, go get a quick cup of coffee if you have to, but please put your answers in the chat when the mystery question is announced. And the last, I know you're looking forward to this, the last Mark Your Calendar event is November 18th. This is going to be an in-person awards ceremony. It is at Copper Point Brewing. It will be outside. I do encourage everyone to wear masks and social distancing and only come if you feel comfortable. We have gotten approval from Sierra Club to have an in-person event during COVID, but we certainly do not want to lose any of our volunteers, members, and supporters by coming out to something if you are not feeling comfortable doing so. I would say that we require registration. Again, that is all on our homepage in the calendar. Registration's required by November 11th because we obviously have to bring in food and we don't want to bring in more food than we need. And now for our main event, tonight's program, 1000 Friends of Florida and Palm Beach County's Agricultural Reserve, protecting one of Florida's special places. Our speakers are Paul Owens, president of 1000 Friends of Florida. He works with its board to implement the smart growth policies of this nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. And we're also going to have Robert Hartsell. His primary law practice areas are environmental land use, zoning, permitting, Everglades restoration law. He has successfully litigated several important and precedent-setting cases in our courts. So without further ado, I am going to stop my share. If anyone has any questions on anything Loxahatchee, please put it in the chat and I will try to ask that. And I am going to ask Paul to unmute or try to get him to unmute. And Paul, please share your screen. There you go. Thank you, Paul. We can see it.
Oh, and now I think I'm just going to leave it like that without the other. Tell me, Linda, whether or not if I do it like this, you are seeing a full screen or you're seeing the next slide up in the right corner.
We are seeing the next slide up in the right-hand corner, so I leave it up to you.
Yeah, it's a glitch. I'm sorry that I haven't quite figured out how to handle with my laptop. Anyway,
Hit
so
from beginning all the way on the left. There you go. It should work then.
yeah, that's the problem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's a presentation icon on the bottom too that you could use that was there. I just saw. It was a box shape when you had it on that previous page, but you can also go way up to the top in the red bar and there's a presentation, looks like a screen. See this one where you have that pen on the far left, go over to the right 4 and you'll see the presentation monitor. Try clicking on that. Below your graphic, below your photo. I'm sorry.
Not
Well,
Do you see your icons below your slide? The one of the pen, there's a stylus or a pen.
yes.
Yeah, go in to from the left over to the right. In the middle there's a monitor. Just click it. Let's see, it was supposed to, I would enlarge it, I thought.
Yeah, no,
Well-
I'm going to go back to here. All right, without further ado, sorry about that, folks. Good evening, and thank you to everybody who has come tonight. I'm pleased to have this opportunity to join in this discussion about protecting one of Florida's most unique and special places, Palm Beach County's Agricultural Reserve. Robert and Heidi will be following my presentation with a discussion of the specifics of 1,000 Friends' involvement in defending the Agricultural Reserve. But first, I'm going to set the for their discussion with a short summary of 1,000 Friends and our long history of engagement in Palm Beach County. If you're not familiar with 1,000 Friends, we're Florida's leading nonprofit advocate of growth management. Since our founding in 1986, we've been partnering with citizens, community, and conservation and business groups and others to build more sustainable communities while we save special places throughout Florida. And we're committed to empowering citizens to engage successfully in the community planning process. We lost our co-founder, Nathaniel Reed, in the summer of 2018, but we haven't lost his vision for a state where we protect our environment and quality of life, even as we grow. If you're not familiar with Nat, he advised 2 presidents and 6 Florida governors from both parties. He played a leading role in some of the most important federal and state environmental initiatives of the past half century. That includes at the federal level, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, the National Environmental Policy Act, and the banning of DDT. And on the state level, it includes stopping the Everglades Jetport and the Cross Florida Barge Canal, and establishing Preservation 2000 and Florida Forever to protect millions of acres of land from development. Nat co-founded 1,000 Friends of Florida in 1986 with Dr. John M. DeGrove, who was known as the father of growth management in Florida. They intended 1,000 Friends to serve as a watchdog for the Growth Management Act of 1985. That landmark law required each county and municipal government to adopt a local comprehensive plan consistent with regional and state plans. It established a process for the state to approve local plans and amendments. It created formal state administrative hearings for challenges and sanctions for noncompliance, and it enhanced citizens' standing to file challenges. 1,000 Friends of Florida is a statewide organization whose mission is to promote growth management and environmental stewardship in all of Florida's 67 counties. However, we've always maintained a special interest in protecting Palm Beach County from incompatible development. Throughout our history, we've won a series of important victories for smart growth and sustainable development in Palm Beach County. And we've had the help of Robert and his firm on a lot of these battles. Our most notable victory may have come 15 years ago when we played a leading role in the effort that led the Scripps Biomedical Research Institute to relocate the site of its new campus from western rural Palm Beach County, the Mecca Farm site, you might remember, east to the current infill site near existing roads and schools. We established the Palm Beach Martin County Green Initiative to promote sound community planning and effective advocacy in both counties. We've worked to maintain Palm Beach County's managed growth tier system, adopted in 1999 to protect the county's quality of life. And the Agricultural Reserve happens to be one of those tiers. Over the years, 1,000 Friends has challenged development proposals that were inconsistent with the county's growth plans, including quite a few in the reserve. Robert and Heidi will be talking in detail about our work in planning and defending the reserve. In recent years, we've opposed the extension of State Road 7 because of the threat it would pose to the Grassy Waters Preserve, which of course is the water supply for West Palm Beach and Palm Beach. And 3 years ago, we conducted a pair of workshops in Palm Beach County to examine the potential impact of the projected population increase in the county over the next half century. In 2016, 1,000 Friends, the University of Florida, and the Florida Department of Agriculture produced a landmark pair of reports, Florida 2070 and Water 2070, to examine the impact of increased population on land use and water demand in Florida over the next half century. The reports looked at Florida as a whole and also broke the state into 4 regions. For the workshops in 2018 that I mentioned, we asked researchers at the University of Florida to extrapolate the impacts on land use and water demand from the state and regional maps to Palm Beach County. The University of Florida Bureau of Business and Economic Research projected Palm Beach County's population would grow from 1.3 million in 2010 to 2.2 million by 2070. Those were classified as moderate projections by Bieber. So far, the population has been roughly on track with what Bieber projected, with the county adding about 200,000 residents over the past decade. The 2.2 million projected population in 2070 would represent a 46% increase from today. Our UF partners projected that if patterns of growth and development in Palm Beach County remain the same as in 2010, by 2070, the projected population increase will lead to the amount of developed land in Palm Beach County almost doubling from 17% to 30%, with more than 150,000 additional acres of land developed. Agricultural lands will be hardest hit. Well, in 2010, approximately 35% of Palm Beach County was agricultural. By 2070, only 23% will be, a decrease of almost 144,000 acres. But if Palm Beach County increases its average development density by a modest 20% and permanently projects or protects lands that are part of the Florida Wildlife Corridor or have been identified as priorities for conservation under the Florida Forever program, the picture brightens considerably. More than 100,000 acres in the county will be saved from development, and more than 100,000 acres of agricultural land will be preserved, all while still accommodating the projected population increase in the county. Now let's turn to what's ahead for water demand in Palm Beach County. if the population increases as projected and current patterns of development remain the same through 2070. Development-related water demand will more than double between 2010 and 2070. Blame it on a combination of more residents and sprawling development that are associated with greater landscape irrigation. Agriculture-related water demand will actually decrease by 30% over the same period, primarily because of the significant loss of agricultural land to encroaching development. But what happens if Palm Beach County follows more compact development patterns, protects more conservation lands, and water users each conserve a modest 20%, as shown in the 2070 alternative scenario on the right side of the bar graph? Development-related water demand will increase by 33% instead of 131%. Greater water conservation measures would make the reduction in demand even more significant. Agricultural water demand will be reduced by 7% when compared with 2010, with most of the reduction attributable to the loss of agricultural lands. So how does Palm Beach County avoid the 2070 trend and instead realize the 2070 alternative? Its leaders can start by sticking with the managed growth tier system to protect its rural and agricultural lands, including the ag reserve, from incompatible development. They can implement and enforce policies to promote more compact development, which not only saves land, but also makes communities more livable and walkable. New development and the retrofit of existing development in Palm Beach County should include a mixture of homes, shops, schools, and offices within close proximity, and a range of housing choices to ensure affordability. They can promote infill and redevelopment in a manner that is sensitive to existing communities. And when new areas are approved for development, they should be near existing communities and infrastructure. It's essential to configure new development for multiple transportation options, including walking, biking, and public transportation. And care should be taken to protect historic and natural resources as development occurs. In addition to our efforts in Palm Beach County, 1000 Friends has consistently pursued policies at the state level that benefit the county, supporting investments and other actions to restore the Everglades, seeking robust funding every year for land conservation through the Florida Forever program, advocating more investment in water quality projects like septic to sewer conversion, and stricter pollution limits to curb blue-green algae and red tide, seeking help for local governments in vulnerable coastal areas to protect them from the increased threats that come with climate change, including sea level rise, flooding, and stronger storms, opposing state policies that inhibit local governments from making local decisions, including decisions to protect their environment and quality of life. State legislators took a number of actions in the 2021 session with our support that will benefit Palm Beach County. They quadrupled annual funding for land conservation from $100 million to $400 million. Thank you, Congress, for a lot of that. They provided another year of robust funding for Everglades restoration and water quality projects. They approved $500 million each for coastal resilience and septic to sewer grants for local governments. Again, thank you, Congress. And they repealed the 2019 law that authorized a 330-mile network of toll roads through rural Western Florida. This is good news for Palm Beach Countyans because you would have been subsidizing this boondoggle with your tolls, and more urgent transportation improvements in Southeast Florida would have gone unfunded. Of course, it's also good news if you value the environmental resources that were threatened by the toll road network, from the edge of the Everglades to natural springs to panthers and so on. This was a big step forward for Florida to move on from the M-Course toll road network. And we worked pretty hard on that, but we had a lot of help from allies on that as well. But most of the policy options I've discussed don't depend on waiting for action from Tallahassee, thank goodness. Your local leaders in Palm Beach County are still the most important stewards of your environment and quality of life in this county. The decisions they make on growth and development will largely determine the county's future. To do your part, stay engaged, help shape and participate in critical planning processes, attend hearings, meet with elected officials and staff, talk with your neighbors, and share your knowledge on why planning matters. And remember to conserve water. Choose Florida Water Star certified properties when you buy a new home, and follow Water Star guidelines when you remodel an existing home. Use high efficiency appliances that are labeled WaterSense. And if you have an irrigation system, make sure you minimize water consumption. Or better yet, figure out a way you don't have to water at all by selecting Florida-friendly plantings that require little to no irrigation. And we do welcome your support in our efforts to build better communities and safe special places in Palm Beach County and throughout Florida. Help us continue to engage with leaders in the Capitol, commission and council chambers and courthouses throughout our state. Help us keep informing and empowering citizens to exercise their right to have a say in the future of their communities and their state. And help us keep going to bat for a better future for Palm Beach County. So now I'm going to hand over the program, or hand it back to Linda to hand it over to Robert and Heidi. And I appreciate everyone's attention.
Thank you, Paul. I also would like everyone to keep putting their questions in the chat as we're switching over. Heidi, you should be able to, yes. Excellent. And hopefully you are also unmuted, Robert.
Yes. So thank you very much. Robert's going to start off. Robert, you need to unmute yourself.
I'm like you guys, this is all new to me, Zoom. Thank you, COVID. So it's a great way to have these presentations, and a lot of people can join, and we get a lot more participation. As a legal counselor, I can tell you that hearings are a lot easier when you can get up, put on a pair of shorts, a suit top, and go to a hearing before a magistrate or a judge. It's just fantastic. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Drew, for putting this on. I love representing you guys. You guys are fantastic. Anytime you need me out here, I think the last time I spoke was at Broward Sierra. That was several years ago. Want to introduce the firm first. Robert Hartsell, PA, I'm the founding member. I started it several years ago as a private public interest law firm. Some of you might know me from the Everglades Law Center, formerly the Environmental and Land Use Law Center. Why I started a private public interest law firm, just to describe what it is I felt that back when we were a nonprofit, that we were competing for the same pool of money to litigate some of these projects. So when it came to actually carrying the stick or using the stick in the litigation sense, we were competing for the same pool of money as Sierra and Thousand Friends and Conservancy and all the other NGOs out there. So what we decided to do was to charge a low, very, very low bono rate or pro bono rate to our clients that are the NGOs that have been with us for 15 years, and that we would also take on other clients who would end up paying the bills and keeping the lights on. So, and those clients are all vetted so that we don't take on any bad guy clients, and we only take on the nice folks. So we've been providing, since 2011, we've been providing environmental and land use law for NGOs, including Sierra Club. We're your lawyers. We work with Drew on probably a daily basis. We work with Paul on a daily basis and a lot of different programmatic stuff. We work with National Sierra. We work with Broward Sierra and Suncoast Sierra on pretty much daily basis. Let me introduce the firm. That's me. Like I said, I used to work with the Everglades Law Center. I still sit on their board of directors. I still work very closely with Richard Grosso, who we're currently litigating together like Batman and Robin on a couple of other cases right now. I taught adjunct at Nova Southeastern University in land use law. I cut my teeth doing environmental consulting. But on to my most favorite people in the whole wide world, my staff, who I consider my partners, as I am the lowest man on the totem pole here. Sarah McSherry, who used to be Sarah Hayter, former DEP lawyer who has an LLM in environmental law from Florida State. Excellent lawyer, excellent brief writer. Again, one of my favorite people in the whole world. And Heidi, who you see here, who heads up our programmatic ag reserve. She's the one that writes the letters. She's the one that signs them. She's the one that you see on the TV in front of the commission arguing on your behalf. She does a great job. She's really knowledgeable. She's picked up the ag reserve issues tremendously. She's going to give a substantive presentation tonight on what our efforts are and what we're doing and what you can do as a Sierra Club member to help us out and push us along. And then the guy who carries the stick, this is our litigator, Shai Oziri. He is the, he gets down and dirty and in the mud, and he stresses out all day long over litigation. And he is our litigator. He's the guy who goes out there when we cannot advocate enough to get what we want or what we need for the environment. He's the one that goes out there and pushes it further. In addition to Heidi, who also does most of our federal suits. And right now we're doing one for Sierra Club. It's Suncoast, I think, up in Serenova Preserve. And that has to do with some of the MCOR stuff. This was a precursor, the Suncoast Expressway, which we have fully briefed, and we're waiting on the outcome to that one. So I'll pass it on to Heidi.
Thank you, Robert. Speaking of getting down and dirty, this is the pig that I spoke about before the meeting started, who is happily now living on a farm in Loxahatchee. But a little bit of the history of the agricultural reserve. This distinct area of the county spans 22,000 acres west of the suburban unincorporated communities of Boca del Rey and Boynton, and east of the Loxahatchee Wildlife Reserve. The purpose of the agricultural reserve is to preserve unique farmlands and wetlands in order to enhance agricultural activity, environmental and water resources, and open spaces by limiting uses to agricultural, conservation, low-density residential development, and non-residential uses which serve the needs of the farm workers and residents of the agricultural reserve tier. That's what's written in the comprehensive plan today. It's, as we'll go through our presentation this evening, you'll see how some of those core principles are being challenged by developers seeking to have increased densities and intensities. The idea of the agricultural reserve was to create a rural safe haven environmental buffer from the suburban and urban tiers. The members of 1000 Friends of Florida and the Sierra Club advocate for the preservation of these agricultural resources and open spaces that are a much needed buffer for the environmental vitality of the communities without encroaching on the increased without the encroachment of increased high density residential, commercial, mixed and industrial uses. So what makes up the ag reserve? The land designation and the future land use designation of the comprehensive plan is divided into categories, with the vast majority of the ag reserve being designed as agricultural reserve and conservation. And then we see that there's minimum, low commercial and industrial, and that residential aspect usually fits into the agricultural reserve designation. While the status quo is one single family home on 5 acres, there is an opportunity for increased density with a PUD, a planned unit development. And those planned unit developments can be clustered with one unit per 1 acre. But what the ag reserve requires is that there be preserve set aside for this increased density. So what we're looking at is a 60-40 or an 80-20 minimum of development as to preserved areas. And it can get a little complex, so I'll try to break it down. So when you have 1 residential unit per 1 acre, there has to be a caveat that a percentage of that total acreage be set aside as preserved areas. And typically these are preserved off-site and are swapped between other approved developments, which there, a little while ago, there was an opinion that a canal can be considered a preserved area for this density requirement of having preserved areas off the development site. It's an unfortunate opinion. It's going to be going before the Palm Beach County Commissioners on November 3rd. If you have an opportunity to speak against it, I highly recommend that you go and let your voices be heard. They are considering a text amendment to allow for a particular project to move forward with those canal right-of-ways being used as preserved space. But what the comp plan allows today is if there's going to be a development in ag PUD, it has to be a minimum of 250 acres for a 60-40 split. So 60% of that property needs to be preserved and 40% can be developed on. So the development is being clustered into a smaller part of the total acreage. And instead of it being 1 unit per acre, it ends up being 2.5 units or 3 units per acre because of that increased density. There's also a requirement or an allowance in the comprehensive plan for a PUD on a minimum of 40 acres. With a smaller type of development like that, there needs to be an 80% preserve and a 20% development area. And I'm going to switch it back over to Robert to talk about some of what 1000 Friends of Florida has done with the agricultural reserve.
Of course, 1000 Friends of Florida has been actively following and participating in the Palm Beach County-wide planning for decades. Some of the big cases that have come out of Palm Beach County were 1000 Friends of Florida and also Sierra Club and Loxahatchee Group, including Kay Gates, who is on here, and I saw her, and I think she was my very first witness I ever had on the stand back when we were doing scripts at Mecca. So hello, Kay. By invitation, 1000 Friends of Florida has participated as a stakeholder in the Ag Reserve Workshop in 2015. I had the luxury today of going back since we were doing this presentation and reading some of my notes and some of the comment letters that we had sent out in 2015. And it's amazing since 2015 how much change in our position due to the failure of Palm Beach County to hold strong on the comprehensive plan. The little changes have led to a lot of development out there since that time, since the 2015 workshop. The workshop, which they're doing again, it reviews the necessary guiding goals, the policies and objections that we're going to look at in the future 10 years from now. And we need to stand strong and be there to support Sierra Club. The numbers do matter. Now, 1,000 Friends has consistently provided this planning expertise and the local knowledge for you guys, so you can advocate for preserving the ag reserve. Now, as demand for development increased during the years, many farms were sold to developers, including the GL Homes, seeking AGR PUDs, with the argument that increasing density intensity of use, along with expansion of commercial uses, was necessary to meet demand of the growing residential areas. It lies the problem. The more development that you have within the ag reserve, when you start allowing the housing developments to come in and the retirement homes, it's not compatible with agriculture. Agriculture is almost like an industrial process where these are farmers with tractors and trailers and haulers and semis, and they're spraying chemicals, and that is not compatible with a housing development that goes up right next to it. So the next issue you're going to get are the people within these developments complaining about the noise and the impacts of the farming. And so you're going to have more pressure on the farmers to move out of the ag reserve and for more development within the ag reserve. It's a death by 1,000 cuts, but it will happen if you don't stand strong. So I ask that, 1,000 Friends puts a lot of time and effort into planning. They have professional planners on staff. Use their information, go to their websites, get informed, understand the issues, understand the numbers, and show up and have your voice be heard. Heidi?
Thank you, Robert. And to go off of the death by 1,000 cuts, which is actually in one of my next slides, what's been happening is this chipping away of the ag reserve with all of these exemptions that are being offered, requested and approved by certain developers, because these farmers are moving out and onto different things. And to say that farming is no longer a viable business in the ag reserve is completely inaccurate. While there might be lesser farm space, that doesn't mean that you can't farm smarter and more compact. So back in 2015, 1,000 Friends was recognizing that there's this trend of proposed future amendments to the comprehensive plan focusing on the ag reserve that was summarily chipping away at agriculture, conservation, and very low density residential development in exchange for higher densities and intensities of use, leading towards, as Robert said, the death by 1,000 cuts. So in 2015, years ago now, 1,000 Friends made their position unequivocally clear that continuity and minimum size are fundamental requirements that are necessary to protect agriculture, with the understanding that elimination of these requisites would encourage development of the reserve and discourage and quite possibly endanger the continued existence of farming by chipping away at the critical mass necessary for continued viable farming operations. So that was in 2015, and we're still seeing it happening today. So there needs to be a shift in the ag reserve mentality of, just because there might be less farming space available doesn't mean that we need to give up the protections in the agricultural reserve, as there's still a lot of environmental vitality that needs to be happening. There's still open space to be preserved. There's wetlands that can be restored. And these are things that are important to bring to the attention of the commissioners, in the sense of, we hear the farmers, they're wanting to move out, but that doesn't mean that we need to now become an urban or suburban tier. So currently the ag reserve is at risk of phasing out agricultural lands in favor of high density residential, increased commercial, minuscule or elimination of preserved parcels, and low industrial sectors, all of which have been used by applicants as examples of good planning practices that have, quote, spurred additional changes in the agricultural reserve. And this is what we've seen as recently as last week during the reserve at Atlantic proposal, where these applicants are putting into their proposals to the commissioners, look at all the changes in the ag reserve. We're not asking for anything special. We're just asking that you do what you did for those other developers. And that type of mentality needs to be brought to light and demonstrated that it's completely inappropriate with the plans that govern the agricultural reserve in the comprehensive plan as it stands now. So what must be done? What can Sierra Club and 1000 Friends of Florida keep doing? And I'll put this back in Robert's hands.
We started with 20,000 acres in the ag reserve. The purpose was to raise vegetables and fruits. Then the first thing we know, without any notice, was that they were going to allow the 60-40. And this wasn't talked about. It was a surprise that came about. So now we've got the inclusion of residential. So how much land do we have left? How much land do we have left in agriculture right now?
Ed, excuse me, put it in the chat. We'll get to questions at the end, okay? Please. Please.
All right, to move on. So what do we do if we have to show up in numbers? I see it in the chat. You have to send in cards. It's not a matter of printing out 1,000 pieces of paper and everybody sign one. Petitions don't work. It's got to be personal communications. Call your commissioners. Call every commissioner. Call the mayor. Call the city. Whatever you need to do, that's what works. It's that type of pressure that works in advocacy. Now, when that does not work, 1000 Friends and Sierra Club provides Palm Beach County residents, including yourself, the opportunity to enforce the comprehensive plan through real legal avenues. Through careful review and scrutiny, we provide legal analysis on the proposed text amendments, future land use amendments, rezoning applications, variances, etc., to identify the inconsistencies with the overarching objective of the ag reserve to preserve this unique farmland and wetland in order to enhance agricultural activity, environmental and water resources, open space, and by limiting uses to agriculture, conservation, low density, residential development. The non-residential uses which serve the needs of the farm workers only within the agricultural reserve. When there's a concern about an inconsistency, there's a number of methods to advise the county, detailing the inconsistencies and legal obligations of the county. That's to be done by your lawyers. You do not want to get up and start arguing what the legal matters are, because there's certain rules on you saying what the law is. So we do that for you. If you need our assistance, our email address, our website has a comment. You can ask us some questions and we'll provide you with as much guidance as we can, or typically we speak on most of these items. We can provide you with the comments from Sierra Club and from 1000 Friends. We have in the past litigated when necessary, when the advocacy doesn't work. It's a very difficult process and a very expensive process to get to that point. And that's why you want to engage early and often with your commissioners. You want to engage before the decision is made. And then when that decision is made, then if it's made in the wrong direction, that's when we litigate. We litigate through Division of Administrative Hearings. We litigate through federal court system, the circuit court system, and also by filing amicus briefs, which are friends of the court, to support other NGOs that are represented by other counsel. Next slide.
Okay, and that brings it back to me. And just to, we'll get to your question, Ed. I do have a resource I'm going to look for to give you an exact answer, but you bring up a good point that there is a decline in the agricultural lands. So where do we go from there? So a little bit of history on how 1000 Friends of Florida and Sierra Club have tried to educate the commissioners on what their obligations are under the comprehensive plan and the very purpose of the agricultural tier. Sierra Club and 1000 Friends of Florida have opposed a multitude of proposed text in future land use amendments as inconsistent with the comprehensive plan's goals, policies, and objectives for the ag reserve for many, many years, including the ones that are listed on your screen. Many of those applications were withdrawn on the day of the hearing or beforehand, and we like to think we had a part in that. Sometimes there's so much public opposition to an application, and it's very known prior to it going up for hearing, that the attorneys for the developers will just say, let's pull the plug. We know it's not going to go through. Let's try to revisit it, rework it. And what we're seeing now is that many of these applications that had come up in 2018 are now being brought before the commissioner again. Some of them under a different name, some of them with a completely different proposal for the commissioners that seem a bit more attractive. For example, on October 15th, we had the Reserve at Atlantic proposed. This was the third time that it's been before the different commissions. And it's been varying between requesting industrial, which did not go over well in the commission, to now it's proposing a workforce housing element in exchange for a higher density to be allowed on this parcel of land that's under 40 acres. If they were to, if they had that 40-acre parcel, then they could ask for a PUD, a planned unit development, that would allow them an 80-20 split, 80% being preserve, 20% being development with a cluster of residential homes on that 20%. And again, they could use the whole parcel for development, and those 80 preserves could be off-site. What they had been requesting was to put those preserve acres on site and use it as recreational open space, which doesn't follow the guidance of the comprehensive plan for it to be not so much of the agricultural use, because it can be an open space kind of concept, but to have it on the development property itself was found to be completely outside of what the comprehensive plan is requesting, that it be that kind of a buffer between the density and the open space. So 1000 Friends of Florida has, and the legal team, we've been consistent at reiterating our concerns, the strict preserve requirements of the Ag Reserve, and making clear to the considering commissions and the importance of these agriculture and communities and environmentally sensitive lands. And a little bit of understanding of what's happening when a proposal goes before the commission. It gets reviewed by staff. It goes between the planning commission. Sometimes it goes before the zoning commission before it gets to the commissioners, the board of county commissioners. So what we like to do is we'll go in front of the very first commission, the planning commission, reiterate our concerns. They'll recommend to the county, we don't think you should approve it. We recommend denial, but then the county, board of county commissioners has the ultimate decision-making ability. It's important that you try to speak and voice your concerns at all avenues, each step of the way. But also, if you've only spoken in front of the planning commission, it's important to also go in front of the board of county commissioners to make sure that you as a citizen and a resident of Palm Beach County are really being heard by the decision makers that have your votes to be there. So on October 26th, there's going to be an ag reserve workshop. This is the first workshop that they've had in a while. And the reason why they're having this workshop is because of all of these different future land use designation proposals to change the actual text of the comprehensive plan to allow for exemptions for certain developments, or to allow for an increase of density and a decrease or elimination in some cases of the preserve requirements. There's going to be two main issues that will be addressed during this workshop. One, the reduction of preserve acreage requirements for a PUD, and two, the workforce housing and density bonuses. As our participant viewer Ed stated, there's a lack of the agricultural lands. So what we're seeing as an issue, or what the developers, I should say, is seeing as an issue, is that there's not enough land that they can be purchasing to meet that 250 acreage requirement for a 60/40 PUD. They would have a much more beneficial piece of property if they don't have to do an 80-20 split. So what this county staff identified is that there's not that much land left. They need to find a solution that doesn't result in overclustering of density to the point of sacrificing the preserve areas. What the reserve at Atlantic had requested was to reduce that 250 acreage down to 70, which is an absurd amount of reduction of preserve of acreage, and then that would have taken their preserve requirement from 150 acres down to 40. So we believe that the comprehensive plan is written as it is to ensure that we're not losing this land, because once it's gone for good. And so there needs to be voices heard at this agriculture reserve workshop that says, if they want to build on smaller acres of land, if there's a 40-acre of land parcel, there's a way to develop that with an 80-20 requirement for preserved as is currently written in the comprehensive plan. The second issue is workforce housing, and it's no secret that there is very expensive homes in Palm Beach County that many young families or workforce individuals are not able to afford at this time. The suburban and urban tier has a percentage requirement that allows for density bonus options. So someone can build on a particular piece of property in the urban and suburban tier and be able to have 12 units per acre as an increased density, because they're saying 35% of those homes are going to be for workforce housing. People who have certain income levels would qualify within that. But what we're seeing in the ag reserve is that it was a consideration many years ago about whether or not workforce housing should be implemented. And it was decided that it shouldn't, not because they don't want to open up homes and availability to people of certain income levels, but rather because they don't want to have that trade-off of increased densities that doesn't fit the mold of what the agricultural reserve is intended to protect. So what happened in the agricultural reserve is there's 160 units that are considered multifamily units that can be, that are already in a commercial type of area of the ag reserve. So these 166 multifamily units are approved, but they have not yet been built in the ag reserve. And that was intended to provide for the opportunity for diversity in housing types and prices. So there needs to be a resolution to this housing crisis that must not result in inconsistent density, because the ag reserve would make it more like the urban and suburban tier. And that's not what the ag reserve was carved out of Palm Beach County to become. And I'm going to turn it back to Robert.
Thousand Friends and Sierra Club remains committed to drawing a line in the sand, keeping urban areas urban and rural areas rural. This is smart economically, and it's fantastic planning. The idea that you have a demand for workforce housing in the rural areas is a red herring. Workforce housing should be where the jobs are, and those jobs are in the urban areas. For a person of low income and little means to get on North Lake Boulevard and drive 2 hours to get to a job in an urban area is not an efficient use of land. It's not an efficient use of their time, and it doesn't help people of low income. Developers should not look at the ag reserve for these exemptions from the fundamental preserve and density requirements unique to the ag reserve tier. And a united front is what needs is what's best. Balanced growth does not mandate that the guiding policies and objectives of the comprehensive plan be displaced. Rather, smarter and more sustainable development must be achieved in conformity with the regulations set forth already to protect the ag reserve tier. And with that, I'll conclude. I think the next slide.
So that's the end of our substantive presentation. And Robert, if you want to give an overall conclusion.
Yeah, I hopefully tonight, and this is why I love doing this, is I see it, the chat room just blowing up with comments, the great comments. I love hearing Paul speak because he has all the numbers and the data. I love listening to Heidi because she has all the advocacy skills and she knows the legal ins and outs of the Palm Beach County Comprehensive Plan, which is a fantastic comprehensive plan. It needs to stay the way it is. If you start chipping away, you lose the efficacy of that comprehensive plan. So if I got you fired up tonight, if we got you fired up to go out there and to make comments and to do what needs to be done, it's a great thing to write a check to Sierra Club. It's a great thing to write a check to 1,000 Friends of Florida. It keeps us going. It keeps them going. It keeps Paul churning out the numbers and the statistics and doing presentations, and it gives Sierra the opportunity to go out there and advocate. But you also have to show up. It's not enough to just write a check. You have to go. That's what makes the commissioners move. They see the voters, they see people, and that's how the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and it always does, and the term works, and that's what happens. I've seen so many of these cases where they just go, oh, we'll just sue them. That doesn't help. You got it. You have to get it at the early parts of this, and you have to be proactive, not just reactive. We have to think, developers think in 30-year cycles. They're looking 30 years out of what they're going to do. We need to start thinking that way and not just reacting to, oh, they're going to do a comprehensive plan. So this workshop is a great opportunity to look at this 10-year, 20-year planning cycle and think ahead. What do we want to see out there? What are our limits and what are we willing to fight for? And if you're fired up, get out there, write a letter if you can't show up. I know people work, you can't show up, write a letter to your commissioner, write them to them all. Leave phone messages at the commissioner's office. Like, let's get it on.
And with that, we'll pass it back to Linda for the mystery question before opening it up for all questions to all the speakers.
Okay, well, you can see the mystery question. It's for all the marbles of the Sierra Club tumbler. With Palm Beach County facing a population increase of more than 700,000 people over the next 50 years, how much agricultural land can be preserved with smarter and more sustainable growth policies? Please put your, oh, Nikki was paying attention. Well, congratulations, Nikki. Everybody give Nikki a big round of applause. She was paying attention. She stayed awake. She got into the chat first, all that good stuff. Nikki, if you want to privately chat me your address, I will make sure you will get this lovely Sierra Club tumbler sent to you in the next few days. Uh-oh, it's rigged. I don't know what to say. I'd like to turn it over now to Meryl, who's been monitoring the chat. And I do know, yeah. Oh, Drew, you wanted to say something. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Drew.
I just wanted to thank Paul and Robert and Heidi for their excellent presentations. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
And I just wanted to say that really, if everyone on this can either show up or send a note or an email to their commissioner, that would really help. The second thing is if you can bring some friends on Tuesday. There are groups of people that are trying to undermine the Ag Reserve. And one thing that I don't believe I saw mentioned is that the county invested $100 million of bond money initially to buy a significant portion of this land. But in order to keep that viable, we need to keep the commissioners aware that we remember that we invested our own money. The remainder of that land is protected through the law, the comprehensive plan, and the zoning requirements. That's why it's so important not to change those zoning requirements. The last thing, which we didn't really talk about tonight, is climate change. This farmland provides a place both to recharge the aquifer and also to sequester carbon and to take up flooding. We cannot afford to put a lot of houses out there because we don't have the drainage protected. If we continue to build out there, we could cause the people who are out there now to suffer flooding events. So it's really important to hold the line or the line of sand, as Robert said. So I'm going to turn it back over to Meryl now for questions. Thank you.
I would like to comment that if Drew can ride his bike to the commission meetings, everybody else can get there and go and have your voice heard.
I will second how amazing Drew is on behalf of the Sierra Club. So if you have any specific questions, please put them in the chat. I know we've had a lot of commentary and especially Mary Therese. I don't know if you want to say anything. It seems like you have a long history of watching all of these reserves go up in smoke. So if you want to ask a question or just reiterate what you've been chatting about, feel free. And otherwise, if anybody has any specific questions, please put them in the chat.
Hi, I'm Mary Therese Stellat. I'm a life member with Sierra Club. I was secretary to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas when I lived in Miami for the Friends of the Everglades, and she was my great mentor. I've lived in Palm Beach County now for over 30 years, and I remember when the Ag Reserve was sacrosanct, when no one dared to touch it. But that's when we had Democratic leadership in Tallahassee, and we had very strong growth management laws. And then we had Jeb Bush come in and Rick Scott, who have just dismantled all the tenets that were so important. And I know Thousand Friends can talk about this, how they were dismantled. The community affairs department was gone. And as a result, local authorities, even though Palm Beach County was really strong, local authorities started chipping away at, chipping away at growth management. And so what we're seeing now, I was just aghast at when I read the headlines that the Ag Reserve was now being compromised in this way. And I'm personally going to talk to several of the commissioners that I know, but it takes a lot of people showing up that will make a difference. And letters to the editor, get the call on Rick Christie and Tony Dorse and in the Post, and have them write some articles about this. And you just have to get out your pots and pans and bang on them to make them understand, because believe me, all the commissioners get money from the developers, and it's really gut wrenching when you see how much influence they have. And, it really takes voices from this voters that make a difference. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
By the way, I was vice president of the Loxahatchee Guild, Loxahatchee group at one time too, back in the 90s.
Wow, that's good to see you here. So Drew has a question. How do we keep farmers in this area? And I know that's something he's talked about before, that obviously some of the farmers want to sell out to the developers because they can get a lot more money selling out to the developers than keeping the land as farmland or preserving it. So if any of the speakers have any insights into that.
Sure, I'll speak to that. And to kind of tie into Drew's question, I'd also like to answer Ed's earlier question about how much farmland is actually left. So I knew I had some of those numbers from a staff presentation last week. So out of the agricultural reserve, there's over 20,000 acres that is designated within the agricultural reserve. 13,000 of those acres have been preserved through bonds, government ownership, and clustering options with the PUDs. It's not to say that 13,000 acres are currently being used for agriculture, but they have the option of being used for agriculture. They could also be open space. They could be a variety of different environmentally beneficial uses. There has been over 10,000 residential units approved in the ag reserve, but not all of those have been built out as we discussed. So with this idea of there being 13,000 acres preserved and in the agricultural reserve and available for agricultural use, there needs to be a desire by the farmers to actually work the land. There is a forced to farm movement going on right now, and being able to incentivize farmers to keep the land and work the land, there needs to be an understanding of what their needs are and what can benefit them to keep working. There's ways to utilize smaller parcels of land. If you're not familiar with it, the cannabis has a part of the plant called hemp. It is not considered marijuana. It has a lot of different uses besides creating it into a CBD, which can be medicinal. But hemp has industrial uses too. It can be turned into clothing. It can be turned into building materials. And it's a very sustainable crop that doesn't take much water, that doesn't take much space. And it has been available to grow in Florida with a permit for over a year now. And I guess educating the farmers in Palm Beach County about other options. It doesn't need to be a large industrial agriculture type of system. I know that there's great farmers markets in Palm Beach County. We don't have as many great ones where in Broward County where I am, and I've also often gone to Palm Beach County just to take part in some of the farm options that are up there. So educating the farmers, talking to commissioners about incentivizing the continued use of farmland, be it through additional tax benefits if necessary, is a good way, because we do need to encourage additional farming, or even if it gets to the point where Palm Beach County government needs to come in and start buying agricultural land itself rather than it being then sold to developers. So if any of the other speakers have anything to add to that, please feel free to do so.
I'll add on that, and you touched on a particular thing that irks me when nobody is forced to farm. That's the zoning. That's the land use that you were given, that your parents were given. And when that land is handed down, you're not forced to farm. You can move and sell your land to another farmer. there are plenty of other farmers that would buy the land. The other thing is, if the county had a sincere desire to prevent development and these development pressures and all the headaches on and all the time, the money and the effort and the taxes they have to spend in budget to provide infrastructure for that area, they'd be better off spending their money buying the development rights off of all that land. That's to answer Drew's question. That is the only way you're going to stop this gradual drip, drip, drip that's been going on since 2015, and we've watched them jump over the reserve, and like Minto, and they've gone out west of the reserve. The only way to do it, you want to protect it, I'm telling you, you gotta buy the development rights off of it. And if you look at the one piece of land you cannot build on, it's owned by the county.
I was going to also mention, I'm glad that Robert mentioned development rights because I mentioned that the legislature had quadrupled the amount of money for land conservation in the latest budget from $100 million to $400 million. Now that land conservation money can be used to outright purchase land from willing sellers, but it's also available to purchase development rights from farmers. And often the state is more inclined to put up some of that money as a match to local funding. And so if the county can commit to investing in the development rights that Robert mentioned for farmers, they may be able to put up actually less and leverage some of that greater amount of state funding that's currently available. So that makes it an even more viable, financially viable transaction for the county. I 100% agree with Robert. When you do the accounting for what's involved with infrastructure for developed land, it's not close. It's much more beneficial for the county for that to remain agricultural. And I also think, and Drew mentioned it, that people tend to, they look at agricultural land as they value it based on the product that's farmed there. And they're not considering the whole range of ecosystem services that you get from agricultural land. It's flood control, it's aquifer recharge, it's carbon sequestration, it's wildlife habitat, it's buffering for waterways. There are all kinds of benefits from maintaining agricultural land. It is by far a net gain for the county, for the tax base, for the quality of life, for the health of the environment and public health in Palm Beach County.
Thank you. So Nikki has a question. If we can't go to the meeting in person, but we want to send in comments, what would you suggest we include in the comments?
I'll take this one. And just to, there's two ways to comment with the county. You can send emails to your commissioners at any time and request that you can send them a letter, request that the letter in and of itself be put into the record, or you actually, in addition to that, you can also submit a comment card to be read into the record. They limit the amount of space that you can put on a comment card to about a paragraph. So it's really important to make sure that whatever comments you are submitting, you get the very important parts to be read into the record. So what we usually do is we'll submit a 3 or 4 page letter that has what the comprehensive plan is meant to do, how the project is not going to be following those principles of the comprehensive plan, and then asking that the commissioners deny. And we've also submitted comments in support of certain projects that we see are promoting sustainable growth and being within the confines of the comprehensive plan. So if you're seeing something that is concerning, put those concerns into as succinct wording as you can. So for example, the tree canopy on the 28th that Drew will be speaking of, something in support of maintaining and growing the tree canopy can be put into the commissioners. And then for projects like the reserve at Atlantic that's going before the commissioners on November 3rd, which the Lake Worth Drainage District Canal right of ways being used as preserves will also be before the County Commission on November 3rd. Speaking to the commissioners and saying, we need to be protecting our agricultural parcels. We need to be protecting the environmentally sensitive lands that create this buffer from encroaching development. We need to maintain the status quo of density and not create an urban center in our agricultural reserve. The kind of keywords like that can help get the point across that you're going to be affected by this increased density and intensity, and it's completely outside of what the agricultural reserve is supposed to protect.
Yeah,
And if any of the other speakers.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think there's, well, I love these comments. So I'll add to that, and I think there is a lot of data on Thousand Friends website. They Water 220, Florida 2070 and Water 2070. A lot of that stuff is beautiful data. I mean, it's just stuff you can use. But I think when it comes from your heart and when your soul, tell about your experience, about you going to buy fresh vegetables from a farm out there, or you every spring that I guess down here it's every December you plant your garden and you buy from the local nurseries and you support the farms, and it's what creates that character of the community. That people go from the urban areas, they go out there and they see a farm and they go, they pick corn or they pick cabbage or whatever they do. It's an experience, and it's an experience you can only get in the ag reserve. You cannot do that in the EAA. I mean, that's industrial farming. I mean, you're not going to go pull sugarcane out, but you can do it in the ag reserve. It's a great, yeah, vendors is great. You go. We went and got boxes when COVID first hit. We got boxes of vegetables that they couldn't ship out. So we were just buying boxes and boxes of vegetables and giving them to our neighbors. It was a great experience. It was a family experience, and that's how you hit their soul, is to express your soul, your inner soul. Let them know how it personally affects you. And then use the data from 1,000 Friends of Florida to make your point. Now, and the second thing, and I want to make this clear because I see a lot of people, and I know we all get angry, and I get that way in court, and Heidi gets that way in court, and we're ready to just rip into the judge, but you can't do that. You can't demean them. You got to be respectful in everything that you write. Even though they're doing something, if they're doing something that totally makes you mad, be respectful and you'll get listened to. But once there's any kind of derogatory remark, or we're going to ride you out on a rail or something like that, then they turn you off. But if they see that you're speaking from your heart, you're speaking with facts, they listen. So that's just a tip. Even when you get angry, just try and be cordial and professional about what you're doing, because there's a purpose. And it's a long-range purpose for what we're doing.
Thank you. And Kay asks, how can we continue to protect the Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge within the Ag Reserve? With the Ag Reserve. I didn't know it was in it with the Ag Reserve. Sorry, asking it wrong.
She specifically asked about the ARM, Arthur R. Marshall.
Yes,
I think it's well protected as it is. I do think that increasing development pressures out there will have a significant impact on it. I think it's at least from the east side. From the west side, you got the STAs. Beautiful park, but I think you have to slow down the development pressures. If you allow the increased densities and intensities out there, you're gonna have an impact, and it won't be a direct impact on the park. I think it's preserved, but I think you will have an indirect impact. You'll have a lot more people living out there, a lot more people visiting the park, a lot more, people always roll their eyes when I say feral cats, and they have impacts. Development has impacts, and you're going to lose at least some functionality of that park as a natural area if there is heavy development pressure on its borders.
thank you. Ed is asking how much acreage of the original 20,000 remains in agriculture presently. I think you sort of answered that, Heidi, but I don't know if you know how much is exactly being farmed versus how much is just preserved. No, okay. And last question from Kay, can we enforce no development west of 441? A good policy, but.
It can certainly be something that's brought up during the Ag Reserve workshop, because they're opening the doors not just to residents, but to developers as well that will be there and speaking on behalf of increasing density and giving them more opportunities to create development. And in exchange, they'll give workforce housing. There's some other incentives that seem attractive to the commission. To answer Ed's second question, I don't have an exact number as to how many of those parcels are being used as agriculture, and I apologize for that.
Yeah, and I think the last time I drove out there, there is a lot of development west of 441. And how do you do it? It's through a comprehensive plan that controls development and keeps development urban, where the infrastructure is provided and where development's supposed to be. It doesn't increase the tax base that you get doesn't pay for the development that's going out there, meaning your roads have to increase, your police, your firefighters, your libraries, your everything that goes in that government service that's provided out there has to increase. And the taxes that they get off of development, and it's a major flaw with the state of Florida with the no income tax, is that Florida's predominantly funded by document taxes that are real estate, and it thrives on growth. And without sufficient comprehensive plan policies that stay put, that stay secure, you're going to get additional development.
Okay, do we have maybe two more questions? We're up to the 9 o'clock hour. If you're not seeing anything in the chat, Meryl, I want to say a heartfelt thank you to our speakers. And we appreciate the information, as well as going to the 1,000 Friends of Florida website for ideas. You can go to the Loxahatchee Group Sierra Club website. We have a full page article on the Ag Reserve, give you some ideas, talking points. But I agree, please speak from the heart. And what we need to try to do is, as hard as it is, become friends with our commissioners and our senators and our representatives. But I want to wish everybody a very good night. And if you want to unmute and everybody say goodbye, 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 we can do that.
There was one chat question, is what's a catchy phrase? And I would love to take credit for it, but it's not mine. It's Paul's and Heidi's. It's stick with the plan. Stick with the plan. And as long as we all use it, then stick with what we got, stick with the plan.
Okay, that's a big piece of it. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
everybody.
Thank you, guys.
You all.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
you.
Thank
Good
you.
Good night. Good night.